This is Jeremy Toman, and today on Founder at 50, my guest is Bob Gillbreath, a digital marketing trailblazer and seasoned entrepreneur. Bob joins me to unpack the real evolution of digital marketing and what matters for brand builders in the age of AI. In this episode, we dive into Bob's journey, from his econ degree at Duke to his early career in banking, where he learned key lessons on the value of differentiation. Bob breaks down early experiences with online marketing at Procter and Gamble and what he learned building and selling an agency to WPP. We also discuss why influencer marketing moved from novelty to core channel and how personal practices like meditation inform his leadership style today. Bob's story offers a unique perspective on leveraging digital innovation to drive business success and personal growth. If you're intrigued by the evolution of influencer marketing and brand strategies in an AI-first world, this is the episode you don't want to miss. Hey Bob, how's it going?
Hey Jeremy, things are going well. How are you?
The summer's only just started, and it looks like it's gonna be a hot one. How are you holding up so far?
I'm staying cool in northern Michigan, where it doesn't get too hot up in the lakes, almost by the UP.
Nice. Well, you're close to all my motherland, as some people know I am from Canada. I'm really excited to chat with you because you've done so many different things, and we keep getting our network has all these weird overlaps and connections. So I think we're gonna have a really fun time here today. I'd love to just take us right back to where'd you go to school, what'd you study, and let's get into that beginning stage of your career.
Sounds good. I grew up in the Atlanta suburbs and went to Duke University for college.
I've heard of that one.
Well, yeah. They got a basketball team, I think, still. But went there in North Carolina, and I was kind of like a kid who was so focused on getting to the best possible college. I checked all the boxes. I took the SAT like 6 times or something to get the best possible score. And I showed up at Duke, and I said, I'm going to relax and take the time to take a full liberal arts college experience, take lots of different crazy classes, learn what I want to do with my life.
I have a hunch that's not what happened at all.
Well, it was it. I had a moment there where I did take philosophy and psychology and, lots of different things. But I still had not declared a major, I think, by fall sophomore year. And I remember getting a phone call from my dad, and he said, you got to declare a major. What are you going to do? It was like one of those down to business dad talks. And I said, I don't know. I'm thinking like maybe political science. Because I was very interested in politics and, history and things. And he's like, no, you're not doing politics. That's what your uncle Dickie did that. And it didn't work. So you're going to do economics. And I kind of remember sitting there and going, okay, I'll do economics.
I'm starting to wonder if that's sort of like a dad core thing. I have an econ degree, and when my kids were first starting to have those talks, it was like, well, I don't know what to study. Economics.
Well, it is. And I did like business. I was always like, as a kid, I got jobs very early. I was cutting yards around my neighborhood. I loved having enough money to buy and do what I wanted. And so we didn't have a business degree at Duke, so economics was the closest thing there. And I did really like the idea of it is kind of hit me on this. You're figuring out the way the world works through economics. At Duke in that time, they had a couple of professors who were very early into behavioral economics. And I had some classes of that. And that really got me thinking of, oh, this is interesting. There's a method to the madness of people and how decisions are made. And that became really interesting for me.
And then what'd you go do with it?
This was 1994. Economy was kind of crappy. I wanted to do something in business, but I ended up mostly interviewing for and then took a job at a commercial bank. And all of them, kind of similar. It was one of many types had kind of a management associate training program. You go in as a class. And I think I spent the first year and a half kind of in a pool of people doing reports, analytics, analysis reports for, company. Walt Disney World needs to have approval for their loan or line of credit. I would write that report. Or the guy who owned 6 gas stations needed wanted to get a line of credit for his business. So it was kind of introduced me to, again, learning about businesses and seeing a lot of different things. And that was kind of my thought going in is, okay, it's business, it's banking. I'll get to be exposed to lots of types of businesses. And from there, something will come out of maybe I want to stay, who knows, but I'll probably find more of what I want to do from there by getting that exposure.
Given that I had no idea you would even have said bank, I'm guessing that you did not get bit by the banker's bug.
Definitely not. There were two things that happened in that time. The first was, it's funny. I kind of graduated from the training program into getting a kind of real job. I was I forget the title, whatever, corporate banking officer. I inherited a group of clients. It was everything, companies over 20 million in revenue in Florida. This is at SunTrust Bank in Orlando, Florida, north of Orlando. And it was a company that made big steel pipe, company that had a big chain of gas stations, the Budweiser distributorship for the Panhandle. And there was a thing that hit me once of I learned to go play golf and take people to dinner. But I remember one time I got a call. I just gotten back from playing golf with my Budweiser distributor client. And he calls and he says, I just went out to lunch with your competitor, Bank of America or Nations Bank or something. And he's going to take 25 basis points off my line of credit. Are you going to match him or do I have to move my business? And I was just like, well, I guess I got to match it.
Right.
And that was the aha of this job is like, there's no differentiation. My money is as green as the guy down the street. And if it's just about playing golf, and it's not even about playing golf, it's not even relationships. It's just, what's your interest rate? And that got me thinking and kind of maybe seeing more of, this is not for me. I got to do something where it's like differentiation and strategic. But the other thing that happened kind of on a positive was in 1995, I flipped on my computer to this thing called America Online.
Ooh.
And my mind exploded. And I just said, I got to be a part of this.
You had your 400 free hours a month or whatever.
Well, in fact, I was very early. There's shades of how companies, rogue employees are kind of going out and using AI for their jobs. Back then, I was using AOL for my jobs and making reports. We had these books of binders where you fold spreadsheets and old Barron's reports. Me and a buddy found one computer hidden that had a 28, whatever, and we were using our AOL disks to get better, more current data for our analysis that we were doing. And we got scolded by the guy running the team saying, you're not supposed to do that.
So you were doing basically competitive market intelligence via the internet, via AOL in 1995?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And breaking the rules, what is this? Where are you getting this? But it was, it kind of overall sparked with me of something's happening. I'm getting drawn to it. A lot of people aren't, or they're afraid of it. There's opportunity for me on that. And that's why I ended up saying, let me kind of hit the career reset button, go get my MBA as a way of get a real business degree, learn more and kind of hopefully get somewhere close to doing something around this digital space.
Got it. So is that what you then did?
Yeah. So I went to NYU, and that was also a chance. By that time, my wife and I had gotten married. We had met kind of the summer before our senior years in college. Let's, we want to go to a good school, want to live in a big city because both of us were suburban kids, and New York was the education of life. She got a job at Time Inc. in the publishing world back when that was a thing.
Time Inc.
We lived in the West Village when it was still affordable for someone on a student loan, and it was a great experience. And I also through that time I ended up, in addition to classes and things, got to work with some local startups at the time. So there was a company called Cosmo.com, which was kind of the first home delivery. They started off with delivery of video cassettes.
I think we need to talk about Cosmo because I've been waiting for someone to bring it up. It is one of my favorite .com things. I once sent a friend of mine a PlayStation via Cosmo in the .com craze. So Cosmo was what would we call it now? It was like pre-Prime, it was
pre-DoorDash or Uber Eats or,
But basically in the late 90s, you could get something delivered to your door within an hour, pretty much at cost, right? Because they were using the VC dollars to subsidize. I maintain that I think there was nothing quite like the Cosmo experience. DoorDash doesn't come close. I don't know quite why. Do you have that same nostalgia for it? Like it was just, there was something really pleasant about using Cosmo.
Well, I think there was something, at least living in New York. I mean, when you're in the big city and even it's still hard to move, like somebody coming to you was amazing. And what I got to see in, a couple of volunteer, free work I did for their CEO and his team, it was a very infectious seeing what a startup is, the energy and the youth, and we're trying new stuff. And it was just very, very attractive, especially coming from a traditional stodgy bank.
All right. So it's the late 90s. You're now, dabbling in Startupville. Before we go into what you did, I'm curious, were you a person who had a vision at this point? At any point, you said you got married, you got your degree. Did you say, I want to be the VP of this by this time? Like, how did you approach those early stages or sort of fundamental stages at the beginning of your career?
Yeah, I was really similar, to be honest, as I went into Duke for undergrad, wanting to let that experience, get exposed to lots of things and see where it pulled me. I did something very similar in business school where I kind of went in and I thought, strategic. I'd done a little bit of a project with our investment banking team, helped fund an acquisition. So I was like, ooh, that's cool. That could be a neat thing. I had some friends who went into management consulting. That seemed almost like the default no-brainer path, but
Right.
I still kept an open mind. And very soon when I went in, I discovered marketing.
Okay.
And although NYU is very much known for finance, they have, strong marketing path as well. Some friends of mine had, they were a couple years ahead of me. They had done marketing in Northwestern and came to work at Procter and Gamble. And they were telling me their experience of how marketing is really interesting. And coming in fresh, I thought marketing was like making ads.
Right.
But what I discovered through them and other, alums and second years at my business school was it's more like being a general manager of a business. And part of that is understanding how to package and promote and position and all the other P's and C's of your product. And that felt much more interesting than, say, consulting, which is you're not running the business. That felt too much like my finance job where I'm advising people and versus I was like, I want to be the one pulling the strings. And that seemed like a really great way to learn the kinds of skills that I think I wanted to use.
So I think, what I hear is a little the difference of like the offensive coordinator versus quarterback, right? One is saying, this is what you're all going to go do. Good luck. And the other one's like, you go here, I'm throwing it, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what'd you do with that? What was your first foray into marketing?
So I ended up getting I got an internship at Procter and Gamble. My friends, helped open some doors for me in Cincinnati. Left my wife in a mouse infested New York apartment while I came there to work on that job. And, they said, you've got to learn how to make a coupon and make a direct mail piece. And there was another kind of crazy guy internally named Pete Blackshaw, who you may have heard of in the industry, who he was leading kind of a task force to understand digital marketing. And I volunteered in addition to those other jobs. I was like, and my boss warned me, you can go be a volunteer on his thing, but if you don't get these other projects done, you're not going to get an offer. So I went for it and got to do a project advising the CEO of the time, John Pepper, on what we should be doing at marketing at the biggest marketer in the world. And had a lot of fun, learned a ton about leadership, got an offer, came back for my second year. There was one company, though, that was on my list. And I didn't interview anywhere else, but Yahoo was on my mind as that may be the one company I would join instead of going back to Procter.
And is this
this is 1998, 1999.
Okay, so it's like Yahoo kind of time.
They didn't have a New York office. They had I interviewed twice with a woman who flew into New York once in a while. And, she said, I want you to come back for fly-ins and meet all these people. And it was funny because I had a date on the calendar. And this is before email was kind of a thing. It wasn't anywhere like today, of course. But they gave me a date that I was going to have my fly-in, and they never followed up. And I'm like, the calendar's coming. I'm asking about it. Never heard anything. And then finally, I get a call the day before, and they said, oh, we forgot about you. we've got you on like 4 different flights to get you to San Jose. You'll arrive at 1 a.m. and you'll have, 10 interviews starting at 7 a.m. And I just said, guys, I don't think this is for me. And, some follow-up discussions it was interesting. It was kind of the Google, I don't know what it would be today, the TikTok of today, something, the OpenAI of today.
Sure.
What Google, became. But it was a sign of me of, I don't want to go into that craziness yet. I still like learning and want to just continue to kind of invest in learning leadership. And this Procter company said, come back and help us figure out digital marketing. I'm going to do that. I can go take those risks later.
And did you feel that the thing that was pushing you off was, for lack of a better phrase, the chaos of it, or just the whole interneting of it? Was the chaos enough to deter you from the organization? Because I think those little signals that we pick up when we're looking at career can be so important.
Great question. It was another thing that kind of hurt my interest was, you could be the brand manager of Yahoo Finance. I mean, and they said, like, they're very open, Yahoo Finance, and you're having almost no budget. Your job is going to be like begging and borrowing and trading impressions with other people, teams at Yahoo and other outside partners and things like that. And while that I'm sure would be fine and interesting, meanwhile, hey, my internship and my job would be coming back and help us try to launch a whole new $100 million business. And we're going to go spend tens of millions of dollars in marketing that everybody on the planet's going to see. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting too.
It's such a funny thing and so hard to convey, I think, in today's world where the internet was still sort of maybe in so many ways, right? Whereas that tangible, we make these, right? This is the thing, this widget, this whatever the thing might be. So what'd you then tell us what happened next?
Yeah, so came back, moved to Cincinnati full time at Procter, and my whole mindset, and this is maybe again getting where I had some real strategy at this point for long term, and my strategy was I want to have my own .com business of some kind someday. I'm going to come here until I get like to the brand manager level. The assistant brand manager is the entry point, then brand manager, 3 or 4 years after that. And I'm going to do, like, I had studied some of the biggest tech CEOs and founders who had come from Procter. And so Meg Whitman, Steve Ballmer, Scott Case, Scott Cook, they had all did a similar kind of stint and got that, the P&G MBA. And I looked at that. I'm going to do that. And I'm also going to do a ton of digital marketing. I'm going to bring my brands into the digital era so that I can learn, get experience, build my network. I mean, basically, I don't think this really happens over there today, but I was like, I'm going to use this thing to become, an internet entrepreneur.
I love that thinking of how you see your path, you see what's going on in the world, and you have to be successful at what you're going to do to be successful for yourself, right? But if you win, your employer wins along the way, right?
Exactly. It's like the win-win. How do you align your employer's needs with your needs? And so I did that a lot, and especially in digital marketing activities. So I was biased to want to do that. Like one early project I was working on Tide, which is in half the homes in America every year. We had a giant program of giving free samples of a new product on a bottle. And I came in and they said, okay, you could have this project now. What are we going to do next year? I said, well, instead of putting free samples on every bottle, why don't we do an internet request campaign? And I made this case and it was like, okay, I found all the right vendors. The case was it was going to save us money. It was back when you could auto opt people into your email. And it was amazing. I mean, we had something like 3 million people did this. It was a 6x ROI. It was like 4 firsts for the brand and even the entire company.
So you were the first person to basically bring even the what we'd say the vestiges of modern digital marketing to this venerable brand, and it worked, right? Because there's a lot of stories of it not working, right?
Right. Yeah, but even not working was the spirit of the company was very much about leadership and learning, and there were even things I would do when you just come in, the analogy I use is imagine someone gives you a Ferrari to use for the weekend. They throw you the keys. If you don't get that thing over 100 miles per hour, you're just wasting the opportunity. And I was already kind of knowing I was going to leave. So why not just make as big of a mark and do as crazy of the stuff as possible? But also there was a strategy of, I kind of looked and said, well, how do people get promoted here? And there was a process where once a year, there'd be annual reviews. All the marketing directors would get in a room and they would present like, here's all the people that work for us. And I didn't sit in the room, but I could foresee what that would be like. All the entry level people like me, we all did the finance thing we had to, do, balance the budget. We all did a coupon. We all did a direct mail piece. And I was like, I'm going to hack that process and I'm going to do a bunch of shit that no one else has done. Because then my two-up boss can go, well, yeah, Bob did the coupon and did the finance thing, but he also did this thing that no one in the company's ever done before. And even if it failed, now we know not to do this anymore, but it didn't really fail because I also took it personally and just so interested and fun and thinking that long-term.
I want to stay on that for just a moment because a lot, we as an industry, we often say it's a very friendly to fail environment is the tech industry in general. And in reality, a lot of times that's not actually true, right? It's a really good soundbite, but lots of people get fired for failing at something. Were you nervous about the risks associated? Did you think to yourself, I'm putting my neck way out, right? Like nobody gets fired for buying a Super Bowl ad, but the first guy to do this big extravagant email marketing thing, you could easily lose a job for that. Was that on your mind?
Not really. I mean, part of it probably was I got enough positives here. These brands are not going to go away. It's not going to die tomorrow. It's going to survive whatever I do. I'm not going to be here long term anyway, but also the ethos of leadership was so pure. And the idea was it is your project. It is your business. It is your brand. You lead. And everything was about what does leadership mean? It's about initiative. It's not about no risk. It's about take initiative. It's about innovation. So anything I did was like, think about that. Like, how would I, I'm sure I went through like, how would I defend myself if this screws up the pooch? Well, I'm doing leadership. I'm doing innovation. I'm doing initiative. So what are they going to do? And then I also had just great managers who supported me and reinstilled that along the way.
Did you have any crazy things you wanted to try that was just a little too much for everybody, or you knew where to push?
Well, I mean, gosh, I had so many debates with my legal team, but like they were, and again, what did I do? I talked to my friends, like, how does legal work here? I've never done this before. Like, well, they hire people from the local law school who get the highest score on taking a memo and finding the possible risks. And so it's like, oh, okay, that's how they work. They find risk. And this is my baby. This is my business. This is all the words on every room, every wall have leadership and initiative and innovation. So I would go sit at the legal team's desk and go, I don't agree with this and this and this. I'm going to debate you on it. And if it was important enough, I'd say, well, I need you to now do what you do, which is your boss has to talk to my boss, or you've got to tell me, yes, it's a risk. What is the dollar value of this risk? And, some of them it felt more fight. Some of them we had fun with it, going back and forth. And, all these little things that you learn of how do you work well and like, hey, we're trying to do something cool. I don't know. I'm the young kid here, but come on, man, we got to do this. Like every little human trick and stuff you can to try to do it.
I love your approach on this where you're learning along the way, you're putting yourself out there to try some things, and you're clearly following sort of the guardrails and guideposts of the organization toward your own end. So I'd love to hear where you went from here. Did you then start the nextgiant.com? What happened next, Bob?
Well, I was having a lot of fun and doing really well at Procter. I got the chance to personally lead some big initiatives. I launched the first like car care product in the company's history. It was a 0 to 80 million in 1 year.
Wow.
I wrote the words on the box, put the whole plan together. My managers just said, we don't know what you're doing. You're the one talking to the Walmart auto buyer and the Target auto buyer, Bob. We trust you, because we were this little thing. And of course, did a ton of digital marketing, did like seeding the thing 6 months ahead on auto forums and things. Then I became the Mr. Clean overall brand manager. We launched Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, mostly by redoing the digital sampling strategy that I'd use on Tide. It came out of nowhere, had no expectations. It was 0 to 100 million, overnight. And then they said, Bob, you're doing really great. Now you have to start checking some boxes and go work on the Walmart team or some other, second assignment. I was like, I just tripled sales on this business, this brand was about to die. It was almost going to be sold. And we went from declining sales to tripling sales. Turnaround of the year, brand of the year. And I wasn't looking for some giant kudos, but I was like, look, give me more cool stuff to do here that you can tap to my skills. And that's where I, again, kind of said, oh, I'm seeing now, this is a great place. I found pockets to really be great, but good is the enemy of great. And a company like that, and a lot of long-standing successful companies, there's good everywhere. They don't need great. Sometimes don't even see great. So great happens when you're in a turnaround or you're building something yourself. And fortunately, that was when some friends of mine called me. They had kind of a long story, but they had some Procter friends. They had left, tried to do a startup in 2000. The bubble popped. Their main investor was a guy named Peter Schwartz, who owned a local small creative agency. And Peter's business was hurting. Their business was dead. And Peter said, hey guys, why don't you guys come over? I'll give you shares of the company. Help me turn this thing around. And so they're like, why not? None of them had known anything about running an advertising agency, but like, hey, we could own shares of the company and have something to do. And then about a year after they got going, they called me and said, Bob, we know you love digital. Why don't you come over? We'll give you a share, as well. And so I was like, okay, this road is ending. This is my baby step into entrepreneurship. It was a digital agency, and I got to join the executive team and run our client success and new business and strategy, and have a significant share of the pie there.
All right, and then just a couple minutes. And how big did you grow that to, and how long did you stay with that? I want to go from there into, let's call it, to the next 5 to 10-ish years.
So that was 2004. About a year later, we sold the company. So that was the whole goal. Like, we're going to get this thing up to 10 million in revenue. It's a hot time in the market. And we ended up having multiple agency holding companies bidding for our agency. We sold to WPP, and it was a 5-year earnout with the majority of our proceeds based on what level we got to revenue and profit at the end of the 5 years. And so that was a freaking wild ride, grind, the digital world constantly changing. 1 year we were doing a lot of this, then that, then this, but just learned a ton. And especially the key, and this was kind of consciously, we said, how do we be different? And it was really around the only differentiation you can make in an agency or competitive advantage is having a great culture. Because it is a people business. Everybody does the same stuff, makes the same websites, uses the same pixels. But if you have a great culture, you don't have to pay at the top of the market. People stay longer. They tell their friends to come work there. They're happier. Their work is better. The clients love them. And so everything we did in our agency was learning about how to build a great culture and letting the people do great work instead of us commanding and controlling. So over the 5 years, that really worked. We went from—
Was that all Cincinnati based?
All Cincinnati based. We had a few people out in the frontiers here and there, but our headquarters went from like 60 people to 400 during that time.
Was it at all challenging to not be New York based for a business like that? I'm curious.
No, because it was great for us because we were doing digital. We had Cincinnati's amazing talent source for marketing and advertising and creative and development roles related to that, because you've got Procter and Kroger and all the other agencies around there. So it was really, we kind of sucked talent in that wanted to get into digital,
Right.
and we're a great training ground for that. And again, retained at a very, industry leading rate. But being outside of New York probably helped us with retention and definitely, cost. Our business was much more profitable.
Right.
And, and we were maybe less of a threat, who knows, but, it was, and a lot of our clients were other packaged goods companies that are based in Cleveland and in Minnesota and, places like that, our clients were also in the Midwest like we were.
I think people often forget how much business, no matter, I don't want to go political or anything, but people make jokes, fly over, whatever, but there is so much business and hubs and energy and products being built, services being offered all around the country. So I could see how that'd be amazing to capitalize on. All right, so you run your agency, and let's get into the teens.
Yeah.
What did you do for the most of the teens?
So finished the long, grueling earnouts, and our band kind of broke. We got our checks. We did some different things structurally with our agency to like let it go, without us. And our band kind of broke up and wanted to do other things. I was the only one who really wanted to do another startup, and so I didn't have an idea, didn't have a co-founder or anything, but I had a local investment VC firm said, why don't you come in, work with us like on a part-time basis? You can help us assess companies to invest in and be on boards. And so I did that. And about a year in, ended up being on the board of a guy who had built a startup that we put a couple $100,000 into. It was kind of a fashion discovery idea. The business wasn't doing well, but he landed on Pinterest as a marketing tool. Okay. And saw that as like, it was kind of rising, and he was kind of doing SEO hack things with Pinterest, and came to me, he's like, hey, Bob, you got to see all this traffic I'm getting. And I looked at it, and to be honest, I was burned out on anything digital marketing, but I saw the traffic he was getting, and I'd seen the rise of Facebook and Twitter, and saw also that the future of my opinion has always been the future of marketing is around how do you add value to the consumer rather than trying to find new ways to interrupt them. And Pinterest was really like a content marketing engine where people are looking for recipes. Well, Kraft can share recipes. They're looking for hairstyles. Pantene can share hairstyles. So I saw this all together, and the two of us said, let's build a Pinterest marketing SaaS optimization tool. And Pinterest will hopefully become bigger. They'll have a partner ecosystem, just like they did with Facebook and Twitter. And the leaders on those partners did really well with the rises of those platforms. He let that business go. We re-recorded together. He was the CEO. I was the president. So co-founders, and proceeded to make every mistake in the startup book. So my first CEO or startup experience, raised too much money, spent too much money, built on someone else's platform. I mean, everything I learned about being profitable, my investors were like, well, why do you even care about profit? Okay, right. I'll just drink the startup Kool-Aid, and hit a point where, Pinterest wasn't growing. They did create a partner program, but they really didn't like it. They even stole business from us. We would bring in a client and they'd go, oh, you don't need Ahology is the name of the company we created. You don't need Ahology. You just work directly with us. You don't need to pay them.
Wow.
And so we ended up hitting a kind of a crisis point. My co-founder got burned out. He left us. I slid in as the CEO. Our investors were like, this is the last, check, $1 more million. I put my own money into it again. And I was like, all right, guys, we gotta control our own destiny.
Okay. And
I'd say this is a moment where it was my first time being the CEO, the guy. We were drawing up plans to go. We already went from 50 people to 30. My COO Ryan and I were like, we might have to take this to 5 people. Like, we were putting those plans together. But I was the happiest I've ever been in my life, in my career, because it was just like, we can just do this. I know I can. It was like back of being at P&G again with my brand. Like, I am a good leader. I can lead this. I can figure this out. We're going to survive. The investors are leaving us alone now. My co-founder is gone now. I got this executive team that I've built that I know and I trust, and we're going to figure this thing out. And we did.
Did you have confidence in the team and yourselves? Did you see the path and you just needed to execute? Was it Was it a cloudy thing or was it just clear as day? What did
It's
it feel
cloudy
like?
as hell. I mean, the only clarity was, and this became the whole, I brought the remaining team together, the 30 people. These were people who, they could have left. Like, these are the true believers. People are like, Bob, I'm with you to the end. Look me in the eyes. And I said, okay, guys, we have to control our own destiny. That means we have to get off Pinterest and we have to get profitable. On the profitable sign, my business partner, Ryan, put together, we created this thing. If you've heard this in the startup world, it's called like, what's your death date?
Yeah, fair.
It's like, what's the date you run out of money, know? And we said, let's create our life date, which is, this is the day we have to be profitable. And if, so we're going to get profitable. We're not going to talk about death. We're talking about life. And then we also said, so we had like a whole, here's how much we had those Pinterest clients and get some renewals. I mean, it wasn't great, but we're doing some stuff. And so we had, here's a date a year from now that, at this pace, if things work, we need to be profitable. And then the other part was, we got to get off Pinterest. We can't count on these guys. We don't trust them. We don't know if it's going to work. We got to find something else. And that's where there was the most murkiness.
Okay.
We had some things we were doing. We were like, what else? Is there something else we could use here around our Pinterest technology? One of the things that was useful was we had created our clients needed content to repin with permissions. And so to solve that, we had gone out to influencers and given our Pinterest management software to them for free. In return, if they would put code on their site that we could use to bring in their content, and that clients could choose, oh, I want to repin this, I want to repin that. And one of the things that came from that data was some really interesting trend data. So think of all this, and sometimes we had social data coming into, like, we could tell you, here's what's trending around lemonade. Here's what's trending around biscuits, whatever, colors. And we thought for a while, and this is where I was thinking we had the most potential and was personally kind of the product guy on it, of, we could sell this trend software, which is very different. All the brands are buying like brand social tracking software, but they're not looking into what's happening in the categories that they operate in. So
right.
I started kind of pitching this as a product, and it had some potential. But then one of our salespeople came back from a pitch. She was talking with an agency, like a shopper marketing agency for M&M Mars in Minneapolis on the Target business. And she pitched them, and this agency said, oh, you guys are kind of like influencer marketing for Pinterest. And she said, yes, and got like a $30,000 campaign for Pinterest influencer marketing. And she comes back, she's like, I got this contract and I'm not really sure what it is. And we're all like, we don't know what it is either. But we found out, like, oh, influencer marketing, this is interesting. And the shopper space where, you could do a campaign around finding influencers. And we saw, oh, we could use some of the influencers that were already have code on their site, and we already have relationships with them. And we could ask, basically we were coming in new to this emerging market. And that campaign went well. We got another one. That agency said, you got to talk to our agency in Atlanta and our one in Dallas. And suddenly we were doing influencer marketing. And one of the keys that was different for us, again, with that new look, was we didn't like the idea that all the competitors were doing, which is to try to look at things like follower count and guesstimate what that meant in terms of impressions of the marketing. And so we were very early in the segment of saying, let's just use the influencers for the content, and then our team will create and do paid media to boost that content.
This is really clever. I mean, people are doing this stuff now, now it's just, anyone listening, I'll be like, yeah, of course that's what we do. But you guys were there sort of starting to invent these things.
Right. And it came mostly from, we can just control this. And it did not even think about differentiation. It was just like, as a business model, it's going to be too complex for us. Like, this person's got X followers. Why don't we just cut the crap and like get really good content, and then we'll do paid. And then it enabled us to also start, that was working for us to have a profitable product. But then it was also differentiation, where we could say, it was just like, strategic brilliance, because we could go in and tell our clients, we're getting you guaranteed real impressions. You can measure it with third-party measurement. You can do third-party verification. We can use your targeting data if you want to. And that was like blew them away. Now, there was also some education, of course. So it was new to the clients. Every client we started doing this with, it was new to them. But then we could go in and say, well, here's how we're different than those other guys. We're getting you real impressions targeted, blah, blah, blah. And then I could start, this is I had so much fun with this. I could start poking my competitors, and they couldn't do this because you can't, you got to do one or the other, and they were all doing earned. If they were to do paid, they would have had to both mess around with more operational stuff, but also start telling their clients that this earned stuff they've been selling is crap.
That's a really savvy moment for you, though, because I think a lot of times people look at their competition and they don't necessarily see that they're not necessarily actual competition. If they can't do what you do, they might be creating noise, and they might make it difficult to get business, but they're not truly competing with you. And that was a really clever way to navigate that.
And they kind of couldn't. And then we also started working that hard. So we were the first ones to get, because we had the paid model, we got third-party verification from Moat at a time when Mark Pritchard at Procter and lots of other CMOs were saying, we need to, know what we're paying for. And we were the first ones to come out. I was doing New York Times quotes about fake followers. That's such a great story. What's fake followers? And you can buy followers. And I was just milking that. And I think got 3 mentions in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. And then here's another, coming in and showing our clients and their agencies, you make sure you're not, you're doing what your CMO tells you to do in this new influencer space, and go with us.
All right, Bob. So you've now had a hand in sort of building the early days of influencer marketing. I want to get into today because I want to fast forward into the modern world. But maybe over the course of 15 to 30 seconds, where did that company land? And fast forward us a little bit into today's world.
Yeah, so we achieved our life date. We got profitable. We started doubling sales a couple years in a row. Get to around 10 million in revenue again. And I decided it's a good time to go find a buyer. It was kind of lock in our success, a little bit worried about is influencer going to go away, but also, because we had investors and my former co-founder owned a majority of the company, we're working our asses off and they're getting most of the benefits. So it's let's go find a good exit for everybody. So I ended up, organically starting a process, going to the leading firms in our kind of shopper and marketing space, and had a couple of offers and went with a company called Quotient. It was a public company at the time that were well known for their digital coupon for packaged goods industry. We had a 1.5 year earn out there, ended up doing great, maxed it out, went from 10 million in revenue to 60 million under them over a 3-year period. We had the hottest product, most profitable. But then once again, I got myself fired around the time COVID hit. We finished our earn out, got our checks, took our whole company to Cancun as a final celebration of hitting our number, like the last trip you could get before everything shut down. I didn't want to be there. They didn't want me. And so left. And that was, 2020. Where I've been since then is a little bit of, with my business partners, Ryan and Ross. We wanted to work together, want to do something. We had another startup idea, spent way too much time chasing that. Luckily, we didn't raise much money. And then finally landed on, you know what? We just like running businesses, making some money, working together. What's the easy mode? And so we have kind of started a holding company for service businesses. And service business is something that we've run before. We know how to do it well. They never go out of style. They don't take a bunch of money to get off the ground. But with a difference this time with the holding company model, we're not running the businesses. We're looking to start companies that other CEOs run, and really finding people ideally that they've been a senior leader at a service business, but not an owner. They're not quite have the risk tolerance to go out on their own and go without a salary and figure out all that stuff by themselves. And our model is come under our holding company. We'll get you a salary. We'll get you benefits. We'll get you a line of credit. We'll take a bunch of the BS work off your plate, and then we'll help partner with you to make this thing bigger than it could be on your own. And one of the businesses we have started is we restarted our influencer marketing company.
Of course, yeah.
Which I tried to buy back over the years a couple times. And then eventually the company that bought us was acquired. And when that acquisition closed, they laid off all my remaining team. It was about a $20 million business still. PE firm just said, we don't get it. We don't want to deal with it. And so we said, fine. We had a bunch of clients and friends and giant network out there that weren't happy with the other solutions in the marketplace and kind of missed us. And so that company is called A2 Influence. And I just got back from the Cannes Lion Advertising Festival once again, hanging out with some of the big clients that we've gotten in the, I guess, 2 years that we've been running that one.
So you've got like the opposite of the Godfather quote where you sort of pulled yourself back in. This is really what happened here. Now, that's an amazing journey. And I think it's fairly obvious what A2 can do. What from a perspective of where a business like that can go. What I'd love to ask you, though, is regardless of where that company goes, how do you now define success for yourself? Right? You've accomplished so much. What matters to you today?
Well, this may sound weird, but what matters to me today is managing myself. I'm no longer in the business of trying to personally wrestle with the universe to get a company off the ground. I have retired from wrestling with the universe, and I'm now in the process of partnering with the universe. As weird as that sounds, I'm going back to it's meditation, it's spirituality, it's, understanding my own ego and trying to add some wisdom. And really, my number one job right now is how can I learn more about myself and be a better human being for my own benefit and for the benefit of my family, my friends, my current and future business partners. And it's the most fun job I've ever had.
That's amazing. I would almost let you finish with that, but I have to now throw a twist in it from what you just said. Given the world we're in right now and your quest for humanity, how much are you using AI on that quest?
I'm actually using it a decent amount. As a philosophical thought partner, and some things like there's a framework that I love that's people might lump it into personality tests. It's called ego development theory. Okay. There's a few different areas. If you go Google that, you'll find a few things, but it comes under this idea that we have an opportunity in this lifetime to kind of raise our level of consciousness. And that is things like when you start noticing, it starts with things like meditation where you notice yourself thinking, and then just take that up 10 notches where you start studying your own behavior and learning. And then once you see that, it's like climbing a ladder and you can see the world at a higher level. And you can see some of the things you were dumb about in the past and dumb about this morning with your wife and seeing that level of improvement. So I've fed a chat GPT and, ego development theory into that. And where am I? I also uploaded my journal. I've kept a daily journal since 2007. I'm like, how am I doing? Like, what you tell me, am I evolving or not? And now that it knows me from that, and I'm, adding other journal, I can ask questions about, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? And it's kind of like a Socratic sparring partner and therapist for me all in one.
I love that. That is a wonderful way you phrased it at the end. Bob, if people want to go find you, or if there's a place you want to send them in general on the good old internet, obviously bob@aol.com probably doesn't work anymore. Where should you send people?
Please come to my Substack. It's called The Workaround by Bob Gillbreath. I write every week. This is both my passion and my pay it forward. I'm writing stories from my career, the ups and downs, mostly the mistakes, to share a lesson. I got a lot of things, I got a ton of them about the startup things that I've experienced and learned from, as well as corporate innovation, fatherhood, and stuff like that. And then if you might be one of those people who is interested in starting a service company with us or just talking about all things service businesses, fleetholdingco.com, fleetholdingco.com is the place, or I'm on LinkedIn, Bob Gilbreath.
There it is. Bob, thanks so much for sharing your journey here today. I also couldn't help but notice your natural progression. Can I welcome you as a future Canadian one day based on Atlanta all the way up to Northern Mich?
I've not driven to Canada, but I've been there a couple times. Most recently in Montreal. I would love to be a part of your world.
Wonderful. Well, thanks and have a great rest of your day.
You too, Jeremy. Thank you.